hope in the dark. My wife and I wanted a baby. We dreamed of holding our child. We imagined small hands, little feet, soft laughter. We pictured bedtime stories, birthdays, and first steps. But the years passed and nothing happened. We waited, we hoped, we prayed. But every month brought only sadness. The house was quiet. The crib remained empty. The dream felt far away. We visited doctors. We listened carefully. They gave advice. They ran tests. They told us to be patient. It will happen, they said. But months turned into years. Patience turned into pain. We changed our diet. We exercised. We tried natural remedies. We followed every suggestion, but the result was always the same. The silence in our home grew louder. The sadness in our hearts grew heavier. People around us moved on. Our friends had babies. They shared happy news. They picked names. They decorated nurseries. They spoke of late-night feedings and first words. We smiled for them, but inside it hurt. Family members asked questions. They meant well, but their words stung. When will you have a baby? Have you tried this? Have you seen that doctor? We nodded. We gave polite answers. But deep inside, we felt broken. One day, we met another doctor. He looked at our tests. He sighed. His face was serious. He said, "I am sorry. It may never happen." The words hit us like a storm. My wife squeezed my hand. Her eyes filled with tears. I held her close, but I had no words. We walked out in silence. The sun was shining, but we felt cold. The world kept moving, but we felt stuck. We refused to give up. We searched for new treatments. We travelled to different places. We met experts. We followed every step. Some treatments were painful. Some gave us hope. But in the end, nothing worked. The dream slipped further away. My wife cried at night. I held her hand. I told her we would be okay, but I wasn't sure. Our home felt empty. The laughter we dreamed of never came. The days felt long. The nights felt endless. One evening, my wife sat by the window. Rain tapped against the glass. She watched the drops fall. Her voice was soft. "Maybe we should stop trying," she said. I looked at her. Her eyes were tired. Her face was pale. She had fought so hard. We both had. I wanted to tell her we still had hope. But did we? I wasn't sure anymore. We did not know what to do. We did not know where to go. The dream of a child felt impossible. We felt alone in our pain, and then, in the darkest moment, when we had lost all hope, something happened, something we never expected. Days passed in silence. My wife and I stopped talking about the future. We no longer mentioned baby names. We no longer planned. The house felt colder. The walls felt closer. Every morning we woke up, but the hope inside us stayed asleep. We went to work. We ate dinner. We watched TV. But everything felt empty. Nights were the hardest. My wife lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I could hear her soft sighs. I could feel her sadness. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. One day my wife visited an old friend. They talked for hours. When she came home, she was quiet. She sat on the couch, lost in thought. She adopted a baby, she finally said. Her voice was soft. Her eyes were unsure. I looked at her, waiting. She said it changed her life, she continued. She said the love is the same. She hesitated, then looked at me. Do you think we could? The idea was new. We had never talked about adoption. We had always dreamed of our own child. But what if love was bigger than blood? What if family was more than biology? The thought stayed with me. I imagined holding a baby. I imagined laughter in our home. It was not the path we planned, but maybe it was the path meant for us. That night we talked for hours. We searched for stories. We read about adoption. We learned about the process. It was not easy. It was long. It was complicated. But something inside us changed. For the first time in years, we felt a spark of hope. The idea was small, but it was growing. My wife's eyes looked brighter. My heart felt lighter. Maybe our dream was not over. Maybe it was just beginning. The next day, we made a call. Our voices shook. Our hands were sweaty, but we took the first step. We did not know where this road would lead. We did not know what would happen. But for the first time in a long time, we felt something new. We felt hope. The adoption process was long. There were interviews, forms, and background checks. We answered many questions. We shared our story. We proved we could be good parents. Some days were hard. The waiting was painful. The uncertainty was exhausting. But we kept going. Every step felt like a small victory. Every signature felt like a step closer to our dream. We met other families who had adopted. They told us their stories. They spoke of love, of patience, of joy. They said the journey was not easy, but it was worth it. Their words gave us strength. My wife and I held hands. We reminded each other why we started. This was not the path we planned, but it was the path we chose. And we were ready. Months passed. The phone calls were slow. The paperwork took time. Some nights we felt discouraged. We wondered if this would ever happen. But then, one morning, the phone rang. It was the agency. My wife held her breath as she listened. Then, her eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak. I took the phone. There is a baby, the voice said. A little girl. She needs a family. Our hearts raced. Our minds filled with questions. We asked about her health, her story, her needs. But deep inside, we already knew the answer. Yes, we said. We want to meet her. The voice on the phone smiled. Come tomorrow, they said. She is waiting for you. That night, we could not sleep. We sat in our future child's room. The crib was ready. The toys were waiting. The walls were painted with soft colours. For years, this room had been empty. But now it would finally be filled with life. We were scared, we were excited, but most of all, we were ready. The next morning we drove to the agency. Our hands were shaking. Our hearts were pounding. We walked inside, holding each other tightly. And then, in a small, quiet room, we saw her. She was tiny. She was beautiful. She looked up at us with wide, curious eyes. My wife gasped. Tears rolled down her face. I reached out my hand and she held my finger. At that moment we knew she was ours. The moment we held her, everything changed. She was small, warm and perfect. Her tiny fingers curled around mine. Her dark eyes studied my face. My wife held her close, whispering soft words. I watched them together, and my heart swelled. After years of waiting, after years of pain, we finally had our child. It did not matter that she was not born from us. She was ours. We were her parents. The adoption papers took time to finalize. There were still meetings, still signatures, still waiting. But now, the waiting felt different. It was not empty. It was full of love, full of purpose. Every day we visited her. We fed her, rocked her, sang to her. We memorized her every movement. Her tiny yawns, her soft sighs, her bright, curious eyes. With every passing day, she became more a part of us. The day we brought her home was the happiest of our lives. My wife dressed her in a soft pink outfit. I carried her carefully, afraid she was too fragile. When we walked into the house, everything felt new. The house was no longer silent. It was no longer empty. Her small cries filled the air. Her laughter brought light. Our home, once cold and quiet, was now warm and full of life. At night, we took turns watching her sleep. My wife held her in a rocking chair, humming lullabies. I stood by the crib, listening to her soft breaths. We barely slept, but we did not care. Every moment was precious. Every second was a gift. We had spent years searching, hoping, waiting, and now we had found what we were looking for. Days turned into weeks. Our lives changed in every way. Diapers, bottles, sleepless nights. But we did not complain. We cherished it all. Every cry, every smile, every touch. She was our daughter, and we were her parents. The road had been long, the journey had been hard, but looking at her, we knew one thing for sure. She was worth it. The first few months were not easy. We were new parents. We made mistakes. We woke up many times at night. We learned how to hold her, how to comfort her, how to understand her cries. Some nights she refused to sleep. My wife rocked her for hours. Some days she cried without reason. I walked around the house, whispering soft words. We were tired, but we were happy. Every small moment felt special. Family and friends came to visit. They brought gifts, toys and clothes. They held her, kissed her, and welcomed her with love. "She looks just like you," someone said to my wife. She smiled, holding our daughter close. It did not matter that she was not born from us. Love made us a family. Every time she smiled, every time she reached for us, we knew she belonged with us. We watched her grow. Her first laugh was like music. Her tiny hands grabbed our fingers. She learned to roll over, to sit up, to crawl. Every new thing she did was a celebration. My wife clapped. I cheered. She looked at us with bright eyes, laughing along. She did not know how much she had changed our lives. She did not know she had filled our home with light. One evening, as we sat on the floor playing with her, my wife looked at me. "Can you believe it?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "No," I said, "but I'm grateful." We had once felt lost. We had once felt broken, but now none of that mattered. Our journey had led us here, to this moment, to this child, to this love. The seasons changed. Winter turned to spring. Flowers bloomed, and so did our daughter. She was growing fast. Her laughter filled our days. Her tiny footsteps echoed in our hearts. Every day she became more curious, more playful, more ours. We read her stories. We took her to the park. We watched her discover the world. Everything was new for her. Everything was new for us too. One night, as I held her in my arms, I thought about the past. I thought about the pain, the waiting, the long nights of tears. It all seemed so far away now. The sadness, the emptiness, it had all led us here. And in that moment, as I kissed her forehead and whispered good night, I realized something. We had not just found a child, we had found our missing piece. Time moved fast. Our daughter grew before our eyes. Her first steps were small and unsteady, but to us they were the biggest steps in the world. She held my hands, wobbled forward, then fell into my arms, laughing. My wife clapped with joy. We hugged her, kissed her, and celebrated. She was growing stronger, more confident. Every day she learned something new. Every day she amazed us. She spoke her first words, simple, soft words that filled our hearts. "Mama," she said one morning, reaching for my wife. "Dada," she said that night, looking up at me. Those words meant everything. We had waited so long to hear them. We had dreamed of this moment. Now it was real. She was ours, and we were hers. We made new memories. We went to the park, where she ran on the grass, her laughter bright like sunshine. We went to the beach, where she touched the sand for the first time, her tiny fingers digging into the warmth. She chased butterflies in the garden. She danced to music in the living room. Every little thing she did was magic. Every second with her was a gift. The years passed, but our love only grew. We celebrated birthdays with balloons and cake. We took family photos, capturing every precious moment. She made friends, learned new words, and asked endless questions about the world. She was curious, kind, full of life. She was everything we had ever wanted. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, where did I come from?" she asked. My heart paused. I glanced at my wife, who gave me a soft smile. We had always planned to tell her the truth, but now, faced with the question, I felt a lump in my throat. "You came from love," I said gently. "Mommy and I wanted you so much. We searched for you, we waited for you, and then one day we found you." She blinked, thinking about my words. Then she smiled. "So I was a special gift?" she asked. I nodded. "The most special," I whispered, kissing her forehead. She hugged me tightly. "I love you, Daddy." My heart swelled. "I love you too, my little star." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about our journey. The pain, the waiting, the moments of doubt. But in the end, everything had led us here. To this child, to this love. We had once felt lost, but now we were complete. We had found our family, and in that quiet, peaceful moment, I knew one thing for sure. Some dreams come true in ways we never expect, but they are always worth the wait.